the messaging that people get is often controversial because controversy sells. And so it moves us to one extreme or the other. So Republican or Democrat, carnivorism or veganism. It's kind of a microcosm of the macrocosm where people have a very difficult time not seeing in black and white. Anybody who tells you that they know better than you do on how you're supposed to live your life is full of shit. Everybody needs something else, something different. Let's try to meet in the middle.
Welcome to episode 1 of Patchworked Pod. I'm your host, Elizabeth Palmer, and today I'm talking with Christian Kloot of Christian Kloot Coaching. He is my brother, and I am so excited to share this conversation with you. We get into a lot of stuff. In content warning, we do talk about disordered eating, so just keep that in mind as you go through if that's something you're sensitive about. We can't wait to hear what you think of this conversation. Let us know on social media and make sure to interact with us, ask questions for future guests, etc. Let's get into it.
What's up, guys? I am a health coach and I was a personal trainer for a long time. I worked with people one-on-one in their workouts, and when COVID happened, I moved online. And I thought it was this big travesty, but it ended up being the best thing for my clients and my business, because instead of just holding people's hand through 1 hour at a time, I gained the opportunity to help them with all the factors that go into living a healthy, nourishing, fulfilled life, like stress management, sleep, nutrition, exercise, and mindset. So that's what I do. I help guys figure out how to develop a lifestyle that respects who they are and helps them move into a position of more health, lose the belly fat, feel better, and be able to be the most present father and husband and leader of their community that they can be. I studied exercise science at the University of South Carolina, got my bachelor's in science, and started working as a personal trainer afterwards. And then throughout the years, I've gotten certifications through 2 different nutrition coaching institutions, 2 with the Nutrition Coaching Institute and 1 with the Next Level Coaching Academy. So those really helped me get the fundamental knowledge on how to create adaptations through nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle. But most importantly is the experience of working with hundreds of guys and figuring out what individuals need.
I want to know more about why you are doing this.
So I've always been into health and fitness from an early age. And I've basically just always wanted to feel good. I've tried all the different ways to feel good, and I've tried to find it in all the wrong places. And even when I was trying to find that in the wrong places, I still, was into health and fitness to some degree. Even through life's up and downs, I've maintained my fitness routine. But yeah, I always come to the conclusion that the real way to feel good is there's no shortcut, and if you want to feel good today, it's pretty easy. You can go out and drink or do drugs or buy a bag of ho-hos and you can get that instant gratification. But if you want to feel good tomorrow and the next day and, bring up every day instead of just right now, then you have to get healthy and you have to do the deep work. So that's what I've committed my life to, is finding out what works best for me and finding out what works best for the people that I work with, so that they look good, but they also feel good too.
In your definition, I feel like your definition of what it means to be healthy and what fitness is has changed significantly over the years. Like, I remember when you were a skinny little boy, just, trying to eat the healthiest you possibly could, but like not paying attention to what your body was doing. And then you were like jacked for a while.
When I first started getting into health and fitness, I was severely misinformed. I thought that fat was bad for you. I thought that if you wanted to be healthy, that you had to do cardio for hours and hours every week, and that skinnier was better. So I basically starved myself. I thought that the only food that I could give myself was, low fat, broccoli, and everything had to be organic, Ezekiel bread, very specific foods that I would eat. I would eat eggs, but I would take out the yolk and just eat the egg whites because I was terrified of eating fat. I was terrified of getting fat. So, a lot of the mindset of the 90s, I think, were instilled in me at the beginning of my journey. And I kind of took out some of my obsessive compulsive tendencies on myself, and had an eating disorder called orthorexia nervosa, which basically meant that I was terrified of putting anything toxic into my body. So I was extremely restrictive with what I ate, and I was like extremely skinny, extremely underweight. So I was like at my skinniest, I was like 115 pounds, at 14 years old, and, 5'10", so fairly tall already. Basically stunted puberty for a couple years at least, and then got a lot of help, got a lot of therapy, and started to kind of use strength training as my new outlet instead of just cardio and running. I kind of tricked my brain into allowing myself to eat more because I went to the gym that day. So I said, all right, went to the gym, so I can eat more now because I know it's going to be going to building muscle and not fat. So over the years, the pendulum swung, and I got obsessed with strength training. And so no longer was it about being skinny. It became about, in my late teens, early 20s, it became about lifting as much weight as possible. That came with a lot of testosterone and a lot of ego. And so I think, my idea of myself was I was the biggest, baddest, and I lifted the most weight. Therefore, I was better than other guys. So I went from 115 pounds at the beginning of high school. I think I gained about 100 pounds over the course of 4 years. So by the end of high school, I was around 210, 215. And then over college, I continued weightlifting. I was doing it competitively. It's called Olympic style weightlifting, so snatch and clean and jerk. Competed on a national stage, placed fourth, and ended up at my heaviest 245 pounds. So I was a big boy, lifting a lot of weight, and that's kind of what defined me. I thought that I thought my career would be based off of me being a professional athlete, which is laughable because obviously Olympic athletes don't make a lot of money. So I'm not really sure what the end goal in sight was there, but essentially I ran myself into the ground and developed chronic knee pain, chronic elbow pain, back pain, neck pain. I couldn't do, I was at the time, at my peak, I was squatting over 500 pounds, deadlifting over 600 pounds. And then at my rock bottom, I couldn't squat my body weight without knee pain. I couldn't do a push-up without elbow pain. So, it took a while for me to get there, a lot of overtraining. And it eventually forced me to come to the realization or reckon with the fact that I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And that I didn't have the secret sauce, and I wasn't, doing what was best for me, that I was actually destroying myself. So that was another kind of rebuild moment where I had to reassess everything that I knew about being healthy, being strong, and ultimately I had to learn how to, it was either give up completely or learn how to heal myself. So at that point, my mindset switched highly to physical therapy. Even though I'm not trained in physical therapy, I know a lot about healing the body through movement, because I had to do it all myself. I aged my joints far beyond their years and had to use things like eccentric loading, mobility, and postural alignment to get myself in a position where I could even do the things that I love to do, which is exercise without pain. And that was actually a blessing in disguise, because I don't know where I was going with the ego-driven lifting, the ego-driven fitness, but it wasn't a good place. And this ultimately gave me a lot of tools in my toolkit to be able to be a healer for not only myself, but my clients. And now, like you said, I'm not as big. I don't lift as much weight, but I'm a lot more healthy. So about 215 pounds now. I am trying to gain some muscle mass, but it's much more about how I feel, how I function, than how I look. Although that also helps because I'm a coach and I'm a billboard for myself. So, gotta look right. But that's kind of, my fitness journey is the pendulum swinging from one extreme to the other extreme, and then trying to find balance. Now I'm a dad. Now my priorities have completely changed again. So it's more about how do we maintain fitness? How do we stay fit with less time and more responsibility? So that's kind of the new goal.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back a little bit, because I think for me, growing up in the 90s as a girl, there was definitely, it was all about like everything that I looked at. It was like, oh, wow, she's super skinny. Wow, she's super skinny. But I don't feel like there was, I don't know, maybe was there that same pressure as a guy? I never thought about there being those kinds of stereotypes for guys, or like something that y'all might see and be like, oh, I gotta get really skinny. Because I thought it was always like guys look at somebody really muscly and they're like, oh yeah, I gotta be jacked like that guy.
I think for the most part, women and girls have a lot more pressure, but for whatever reason, I got that messaging from a pretty young age. So I definitely felt some internal pressure. I don't even know if it was external pressure. I don't know if it was like, I remember looking at Brad Pitt in Fight Club and being like, that's who I want to look like.
Dang.
The super unhealthy, low body fat,
emaciated.
Yeah. And I think that's the 90s, just kind of, it was the whole heroin chic idea of fashion. Like it was, you're supposed to have a flat ass, you're supposed to be skinny, on the edge of, sickness. That was the ideal standard for men and women.
Right.
In certain, media. You've always had like bodybuilding and stuff like that, but I wasn't into bodybuilding at the time.
Right. And I think there's, always been conversations about eating disorders, but I don't think that they were that prevalent amongst guys. And also, I don't think people really have heard of orthorexia. Like, I think that's a much less well-known disordered eating situation. If you were able to like give yourself resources or advice, like if you could talk to that young version of yourself, what do you think there's anything you could have said to yourself that you would have heard?
I'm sure there's something I could have said to myself. I think I would want to give myself the messaging that food is good. Most food is good. All food is good. You know, maybe not the food that's created in a laboratory, but food as a whole is good. Fat is good for you. Fat does not make you fat. And I will feel the best when I nourish myself, not when I'm starving myself. I think when I first started really, really restricting my food, I got this feedback from my body where you have a huge increase in cortisol when you're in a calorie deficit for an extended period of time. And cortisol feels good. I mean, it's a stress hormone, but it can feel really good when you're zooming. You know, it's a very enlivening feeling. And when you're in a good place to be in a calorie deficit and lose weight, that's actually a really good thing. It's a really positive thing. But then if you get kind of stuck on that and you think that that's supposed to be your new norm and you keep pushing that button, that cortisol button over and over again, obviously you get burned out. And that happened fairly quickly. But I thought that was, I think the idea that like, okay, this worked for me now, so this is what I need to be doing forever. I was stuck in that mindset. And also I got positive feedback from people around me, and they're like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Like, you look so skinny, like, oh God. And then I'm like, oh, skinny's good. Like, this is great. So I thought that my identity became wrapped up in that. So I don't know what I would tell myself, but definitely try to give myself the opposite messaging that somehow I had ingrained. And I would tell myself that food is not the enemy, and that I am not the enemy, and that I don't have to punish myself to get better. Like, I can actually nourish myself. The way to get better long term is to nourish myself, to build myself up, and not break myself down. I think the no pain, no gain was like the motif of my early teenage years.
Yeah. And I think even though our family was not super hardcore into like punishment as like a religious thing, I think that was always inherently in the culture. Like, if you're not feeling bad about yourself, then you're not working towards becoming more holy or more good. And so I think there's a lot of stuff that, if it's part of your culture and the things that you're growing up around, there's very little. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. If current me and past me had a conversation, I think past me would be very shocked by a lot of the things that I think now. Like, oh, maybe the world is more than 6,000 years old or something like that. And past me would have been like, I don't think I can even talk to you. So it definitely, it makes me think a lot more about like, how do I talk to my child about these things? How do we talk about food? How do we talk about whether or not we're good? How, like, all of that stuff is now tied up in there. Like, I don't want him to struggle with the same things that I did.
Yeah.
How do you think this changes how you talk to your daughter about food?
Well,
or exercise?
I think if we're diving that deep, that far back into like our religious upbringing, I think the negative there was that we were extremely strict in our beliefs, and it was very much a fear-based belief. And as a kid, I would do anything to get out of hell. Like that was the ultimate goal. I just didn't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
So it's very fear-based, and like you said, like we're all sinners, and we've got to stop our sin and repent. And I remember like the pulpit calls, where they're like, come on up if you want to get saved. And I'm like, well, maybe it didn't take last time, so like maybe I should do this again just to be sure. So I think I got born again
just do a little re-up
a dozen different times just to be sure.
Yeah.
And even then it wasn't enough. And when I was old enough to start feeling things like empathy, I was like, well, why am I getting saved but everybody else is going to hell?
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure how all that affected my relationship with food, but I think the fear-based mindset, I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to get fat because somehow that's going to make me
gluttony.
Yeah, a sinner. So I would say, how is that going to affect how I raise my daughter? I really want to raise my daughter with a very strong foundation of love as the main thing. And, a lot of Christians will also preach this, but I think it's important that we don't let the fear side of things override this, but love conquers all. And it's all about love, and love is the opposite of fear. So if we can learn to love food, then I think that's the foundation to a healthy relationship with food. And so it's not just about the calories. It's not just about the macros. It's about the experience. It's about learning how to nourish yourself. It's about learning how to cook good meals that you can enjoy with your family, because I truly believe that cooking is probably the number one skill for being healthy, even more than being able to go to the gym and get a good workout. Like, are you able to cook yourself a nourishing meal with whole food ingredients? So yeah.
I think that something that I've noticed with Oliver is that, like, the other day I tried putting something sweet on his plate. We made a little mug cake together because he was like, I want to make a cake. And I was like, we can do it in a mug. That's fine. So I put some of that on his plate next to his other food, and he like tasted it, but he just kind of ate his other food and had little bits of that, and there was no like, well, this is dessert, so you gotta wait until later to eat this because dessert is bad and we don't eat this. And then instead he's like, we're trying very hard to make sure he's got this relationship with food where he can just trust himself early on. He knows like, oh, I'm feeling hungry for this kind of thing, so I'm gonna eat this kind of thing, instead of it being like, okay, I don't really know what my body wants, but I never get the sweet stuff, so I'm gonna have the sweet stuff because that sounds like it's gonna be the best. Being able to trust yourself from an early age gives you the freedom to make those choices without fear, and knowing that you are doing what is good for you and for your body, not something that you're either restricted or you think you need to have more of.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, where people are like, I'll give my kid something sugary and they don't even like it. Like, they want the liver pate and the mashed sweet potato. Like, they don't care about the pile of cake in front of them because they haven't gotten addicted to sugar, for one. But yeah, I think we can also call into the question, or call into the assumption, that sugar is bad for us. And it's not. Sugar's not bad for us. Sugar is good for us. We need sugar. Our brain functions off of sugar. But it sugar is available in a context that is not very natural. So it's highly palatable. It's combined with, you know, tasty morsels that have chewiness to it, that are engineered to tickle our senses and our tastes rather than, you know, an orange that we have to peel and chew and process. So I think for us, we were allowed one piece of candy on a Saturday after we were finished with our chores. And we would get candy on Sunday from the candy man after church, but we couldn't eat it until a week later. Which
Forgot
in
about
some
the
ways,
candy
like
man.
the candy man.
Oh man.
In some ways, like, yeah, delayed gratification, all that stuff. I think if we're creating forbidden fruits for our kids, they're gonna try it eventually. So like, why don't we trust that our kids can actually make responsible decisions as children too, and help guide them to making those responsible decisions instead of just telling them this is what you have to do because I say so.
Right. And it's the same thing with movement. If you're moving because it feels good to move, that creates a whole different relationship with all of it. And that's something that I have had to struggle to work through, is like not having movement feel like punishment, but have it feel like something that I really, really enjoy doing.
Yeah, for sure.
So you talked about a pendulum, and I think I think the pendulum idea is so, it's such a good illustration of our society. Like, you were talking about the heroin chic, and then it was like, you know, Kim Kardashian and Beyonce, like, kind of normalized having curves and big butts and all of those things. And no matter what, like, the body ideal is, it always felt unattainable. It's like, no matter which way it goes, I'm not gonna get to it without surgery or a significant amount of work. And so I think being able to recognize that, like, whatever is look aesthetically trendy as far as like how bodies are quote unquote supposed to look is always going to be thin ice to stand on, because our bodies are all kind of different and they all need similar things, but maybe in different combinations. And it's important to like figure out what your body needs and to trust that, like, you know what to do, and not try to just like jump on the outside aesthetics wagon, because, as you know, outside aesthetics and inside aesthetics don't always match up as a result.
Right. So aesthetics is only one part of all the reasons why we should be living healthy. And like you said, every body is different, and anytime you have a aesthetic or beauty standard, you're going to leave a lot of people out. And I think our culture has done us a huge disservice into making that the main reason why somebody would want to start working out or want to start eating healthy. And most people come to me for that. Most people want to lose weight. Most people want to lose the belly fat, build muscle. And that's okay. Like, that's a good motivation to get started, but most people don't stay with me for that. People stay with me because they feel better, and they function better. You know, aesthetics is just one of the goals. Another goal is performance, mental performance, physical performance. Can I walk up a flight of stairs without being out of breath? Can I hang with my kids and run around with my 5-year-old without, not being able to keep up? Like, that's important.
Yeah.
but also the longevity side of things. You know, are we just doing this to look good, or are we adding quality years to our lives? Because if you go in the extreme with the aesthetic side of things, you have like the bodybuilders, and they are not across the board, but a lot of bodybuilders are not the most healthy people out there, and they're actually taking away quality years of their lives. And some of them, especially those who abuse performance enhancing drugs, unfortunately come to an early death because of it too. So sex sells, aesthetic sells, shallow things sell that we can see on a billboard or see on a magazine or on social media, and we're like, oh yeah, that's what I want to be like. Whereas the deeper stuff of like, am I healing myself? Am I building a good relationship with myself and with food? That's not as sexy. That doesn't sell. So I think all these negative things that have come through the fitness industry are a result of marketing and what is making money for people.
Mm-hmm. And ironically, the things that people try to use to bring people in they also end up being like prohibitive in a lot of ways. Like if like people will just not go to the gym because they're like, well, I don't look like people who go to the gym are supposed to look, so I'm just not going to go to the gym. And yeah, I think there's a lot of issues there, but there's people out there like you trying to change those paradigms.
Mm-hmm.
What is your hottest take
In terms of fitness?
or anything?
Shit. I don't know. I feel like I do have a lot of hot takes. My hot take is that both sides are bullshit. Like, I am a firm believer of moderation and being moderate, not just, politically. Obviously, everything's political this year, but with everything that we do, I think the messaging that people get is often controversial because controversy sells. And so it moves us to one extreme or the other. So Republican or Democrat, carnivorism or veganism, it's kind of a microcosm of the macrocosm where people have a very difficult time not seeing in black and white. People have a difficult time seeing in the nuances. And I think anybody who tells you that they know better than you do on how you're supposed to live your life is full of shit. I'm never going to tell somebody how to live their life. I want to have conversations with them and help them come to the understanding of what they need as an individual, because everybody's different. Everybody needs something else, something different. So yeah, both sides are bullshit. Let's try to meet in the middle.
Nice. What's something that you've had to unlearn recently?
My mind immediately goes to marketing because I'm learning so much about marketing. And something that I've had to unlearn or relearn or redefine is like, nobody wants to listen to me drone on about facts. Like, people are driven by emotion. So, I'm trying to reach people. I'm trying to get attention on my brand, on what I stand for. And I can sit down and make, 20-minute videos and post them every day and talk about a lot of deep stuff. But unfortunately, nobody is going to listen to that. So I think something that I'm having to learn is that I have to meet the people where they're at, which is a place of very low attention span. And, I kind of have to use the necessary evil, which is, what sells. The emotion. People change based on emotion. So I think learning not just the factual parts of things, what's going to make us healthier, what's going to increase our lifespan, what's going to help us burn fat at a higher rate without losing muscle mass. That is all great and that's all necessary to go into somebody's plan, but nobody's going to be inspired to change based on that information. People are inspired to change based on the emotions that they're feeling now and the emotions that they would like to be feeling. Mm-hmm. And as a coach turned marketer, I've had to learn what those emotions are and how to tap into those emotions and how to help people show them that there is a path to feeling good. Mm-hmm. And that's been tough because, I want to sit down and give people essays and diatribes on, what they need to do with their life. But if somebody's not going to be able to consume that information, then it's useless. So I've had to learn how to be more funny. I've had to learn how to be quicker with my thoughts and more punchy with my marketing, and using a little bit of the sex sells and the surface level stuff. That's also kind of necessary to get people into the door. I don't know how great I feel about
a lot of shirtless
taking
videos
a bunch of shirtless videos and shirtless pictures and some of the racy things I used to do on TikTok, but certainly got a lot of views.
I still remember the shock I felt when I started watching that fermented cabbage video, and you were just like, I don't know, you were just wearing pants that were skin colored on accident, on purpose. I don't know. But I was suddenly like, I don't think I want to be watching this video. You talked a little bit earlier about how your priorities changed after you became a dad. And I'm curious, like, how did having a completely new schedule and all of that change your routines and what would you recommend to somebody in a similar situation who's also like not, I mean, you're a personal trainer, so it's important for you to like make the time to go to the gym and all of that stuff. But what about for the people who have a desk job or whatever, and then they also have a new kid, and like what would you recommend to those people?
So earlier I said my biggest priority, my biggest goal has always been driven by wanting to feel good. And once I got married and now once I've had a kid, that's no longer the primary goal. The primary goal has become providing a good life for my family and being a good dad and being present and being a good role model, being a good husband, being a good father, because it's not just about me anymore, it's about my family. So that being said, I work with a lot of people who feel the same way and who have basically given up, filling their own cup. And I think it's important that we don't lose sight of the fact that, like, hey, it's okay for me to do what I need to do to fill my cup, to feel good, not superficially, but like holistically feel good, vibrant, healthy. Fill your cup because then you've got more to give to your family and your community and the people around you. So, I think from a practical side of things, you don't have to, it doesn't take a huge amount of time. You don't have to go to the gym for hours every week. You don't have to spend, every day cooking, meal prepping and cooking home cooked meals, but you do need to develop a structure in your life where those kind of things are happening as efficiently as possible. So a practical example is movement snacks. Recent research shows that short bouts of movement, like as little as 2 minutes every hour, just getting up out of your desk and doing a set of squats or walking up some stairs or just walking around it doesn't matter. That actually is just as effective at improving your risk for all-cause mortality, improving your cardiovascular health, improving every aspect of health that exercise improves. Small bouts of movement are just as good at doing all that as exercise as it's conventionally known, where you're going into the gym and doing an hour of structured exercise. So for me, it's about what can I fit in with the time that I have, and how can I find moderation? I'm okay not having a perfect diet, but I need to make sure that I'm still feeding myself, feeding my family, the amount of calories that we need to maintain a good basal metabolic rate. And, that means that quantity comes first. Making sure I'm getting in calories, protein, carbs, and fat is more important than making sure all the food that I'm eating is like perfect quality. So I'm a big believer that quantity is king and quality is secondary. So, I used to be pretty OCD about making sure all my food was super organic, and grass-fed and all this stuff, which is fantastic, but it doesn't matter as much as just eating whole food and figuring out a way how to get that in. That looks different for everybody, whether that's, eating a full meal with bacon and eggs and grits and kimchi and, all the colors, or if it just means mixing up some Greek yogurt with some protein powder, throwing a banana in there and getting on with my day. That takes 5 minutes. And a lot of my mornings look like that because I don't have the time. So I think as parents, we can't let perfection be the enemy of good. And we've got to find ways to structure our life around filling up our cup first so that we can be a good role model and so that we have the energy to fill up the cups of those around us as well.
Being a good role model is good. If we can't do it for ourselves, find a way to do it for your kids. Because there's a lot of stuff that I won't do for me that I will do for my child.
Yeah. Like what?
Like we've been going on hikes this week, or the last couple of weeks, because the weather's so good. And I'm like, I got to be able to keep up with this kid. He's only going to get faster. And I don't know if I would prioritize going on multiple hikes a week if I weren't trying to keep up with the 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah. But I also don't think our society is it's not set up for this anymore. I saw an interesting video yesterday. There was this guy saying like, oh, if you have a 40-hour job, that's your hobby. And somebody basically reacted to that saying like, who benefits from this guy believing that 40 hours of work a week is just a hobby? And so it's made me think about, like, we have these lifestyles stuck at desks. We have lifestyles where we're being encouraged to eat off of the food pyramid or whatever. And then I wonder who benefits from us being less in touch with our bodies, who benefits from us not trusting ourselves, who benefits from us being more moderate and not skewing from one side to the other. And so in some ways, I think taking care of yourself and like all of that is good for you personally, it's good for your family, but it's also essential for us as a society to maintain our autonomy, for us to be a more informed culture and society, for us to like be able to get along with each other and not freak out every time we have an election. That's my hot take.
Yeah, I think we've outsourced a lot of our critical thinking to whatever the powers that may be that say they know better than we do what is good for us. So, who benefits from us not understanding how to make the right decisions for ourselves is people trying to sell us shit. People, big corporations trying to shove shit down our throats, physically and metaphorically speaking. I mean, you can just look at I hate to bring seed oils into the topic, but you can just
I'm so
take the
canceled.
seed oils as an example. And I mean, are seed oils as bad for us as some people say? Probably not. I mean, again, quantity over quality, like moderation's everything. We need fat in our diets. Polyunsaturated fat, monounsaturated fats are perfectly good for us. But the seed oil industry is a direct result of the industrial industry. And, we were never meant to eat most of the food that we're eating, which is produced on an extremely massive scale, at an extremely processed scale, and an extremely profitable scale for those who are pulling the strings.
Yeah. How you feeling?
Good. Fired up.
Yes. I've been waiting for this. Now that information is so widely available, we outsource a lot of our critical thinking to people on social media. And there's so much out there that's crazy, that people are just like watching and they're like, oh, I guess this is a real thing. Like, how do you discern when you are on the internet? Like, how do you decide, oh, this is a good source of information? Or how do you fact check stuff when it comes to like health and nutrition? Because I'm sure even if you go and do a Google search about it, you're going to come up with different results.
Yeah. I mean, we have to build trust in our sources, I think. And we have to use our own critical thinking and understand that the advice given by any source, even a trusted source, is not necessarily going to be the right advice for us. There's no one size fits all, anything, advice that you can give. There's no general advice that really works for, general advice can work for people. There's no specific things that work for everybody. I think if we can just kind of get back to the basics and do the things that make sense, then we can clear out a lot of the noise. So like, just not getting complicated with it. I mean, if we're talking about fitness and nutrition, I think the answers are within us. And if we do the things that make us feel good truly, not just on a superficial level, but on a day-to-day, month-to-month basis, then chances are it is good for us. So I think, I don't know how to vet everybody. It's kind of impossible. It's good to have sources that are science-based, who know how to interpret the scientific data out there. And it's important that, as a fitness professional, that I'm not just spreading stuff that doesn't have a scientific basis. I did just talk really mad shit about seed oils, so that might be unkosher. But at the same time, we also have to understand that science takes a long time, and there's a lot of new things that we're being exposed to that science, hasn't really had time to figure out what the repercussions are, from forever chemicals to social media. So I think my answer would be, we need more awareness within ourselves instead of wholeheartedly trusting what somebody tells us on social media. Journal how you feel today, journal what you ate today and how that made you feel. And then try different stuff. Try different diets, see what works well for you, see what doesn't work well for you. But I would encourage people not to completely get rid of whole groups of food. Let's understand that food is not the enemy, and that there's really no whole food ingredient out there that is bad for us. The stuff that is quote unquote bad for us is going to be the stuff that our biology does not understand. Things that we were not evolved to deal with, like constant hits of dopamine from doom scrolling, or highly palatable foods that we cannot put down, like a bag of Doritos or Sour Patch Kids, which I still eat. I like candy. I like Doritos. It's not about completely getting rid of that stuff, but I'm not going to eat a bag of Doritos if I haven't had my macros for the day. I'm going to make sure I'm covering what I know I need to feel good for myself, because I know what I need. I need food. I need to eat a lot of good food. Otherwise, I'm going to get hangry and I'm going to take it out on my wife. So, yeah, it's not really a great answer, but again,
No, that's good.
Let's be moderate. Let's trust in ourselves. Let's trust in nature, and this earth, that whether you believe in God or not, everything that God put on the earth for us is good, and things that we made and engineered are not always good. They're not always bad either, but a lot of the time they're not great.
It's important to, I think, talking about, journaling and seeing how do things make you feel is a good point. We are so often, we've got to go. Just whatever the next thing is, we're like, oh, I gotta go, so I'm gonna eat really fast and not notice how it makes me feel. I made some delicious food last night and ate too much of it because it was delicious, and I ate it so fast, and I was like, afterwards I felt sick because I was like, oh, I put too much in my body because I was not paying attention to what my body was feeling. So I think that's a great distinction. And I'm curious if you work with somebody who is just so out of touch with their body that if you ask that question, they're like, I don't know how to answer that. What are ways that you help people figure out how to identify those feelings or learn to listen to their body better?
So something called biofeedback. All the things that are the internal signals that things are either going well or things are not going well. And they're all pretty interconnected. So if you can get your biofeedback to trend in a positive manner, then chances are you're doing something good. If your body biofeedback starts trending in a negative manner, chances are you're doing something that probably could be better. So biofeedback is how are your stress levels today? How are your stress levels this week? Your energy levels, your mood, your hunger, your cravings, how well you're sleeping, how well you're performing in the gym, or just walking up a flight of steps. Those kind of things are gonna give us insight into how we're doing on the inside. So we've got to quiet the noise, and we've got to spend time with ourselves. And I think probably one of the most useful skills that we could instill within ourselves in today's world that's just full of stimulation is the practice of being quiet and meditating and just letting go of that constant chatter. Because if we don't have that, then it's going to be very difficult to have any kind of awareness. So I think there is like a level of like spirituality that goes into this, and being quiet and kind of listening for that little voice inside of us and honoring that little voice, and not just trying to kind of numb away all the negative feelings with drugs, alcohol, food, and media and sex. Our negative emotions are there for a reason, because it's telling us that something is not right. We're not living in the way that we're supposed to be living. And I think people shove those feelings down, and we end up being completely disconnected from those feelings. So we lose that intrinsic power within ourselves to understand what's good for us and what's not good for us. So we need more quiet, we need more awareness, and we need more connection to that quiet voice.
Yeah. What are some ways that you are feeding yourself not with food? Like, what things have you been into recently? I know you just had a baby. Are there any hobbies or things outside of your work that you've been into, or has it just been like dad time all the time?
Well, dad time is the most nourishing thing I could ever imagine. Like just the relationship with Cohen, the relationship with Christine. So I think relationships are paramount. Relationships, really, really being selfless in your relationships and practicing love in your relationships is probably one of the best ways to get connected to that awareness. But also connecting to nature, getting out into sunlight, getting out and looking at the birds, looking at the trees, appreciating this wonderful earth that we have, practicing gratitude every day for the things that we have, and doing things that kind of slow the mind down are really helpful for me. So playing my banjo, reading, going on walks with the dogs, like those are just as much for my mental health as they are for my physical health.
Have you found that your OCD is still like pretty strong, or is it something that you've been able to manage pretty well?
Yeah, I've let go of a lot of my OCD tendencies, for sure.
Nice. So it doesn't, like when you're under stress, do you notice some of those things coming back?
In certain areas, I'm still very OCD. Like if I'm in a house that they're burning a candle or fragrance or laundry detergent, I'm not going to want to be there. Even walking up the street and having somebody's laundry detergent smell just reeking, it's not a good time. I used to be super OCD about blue light, and I would always wear my blue blockers every single day after the sun went down. And while I still practice that to some degree, I'm not worried about going out and being around TVs or being around fluorescent lighting or more blue light. Like, it's just the stress of worrying is probably worse than the actual effect of whatever it is. So I've set up the household so that I can turn on lamps at night that have blue light blocking bulbs, and if we're watching TV late at night, I'll wear my blue blockers. So I think empowering ourselves with the knowledge, and then doing what we can to structure our lives based on that knowledge, and then letting go of the things that we can't control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think we don't realize how the negative effects of stress, and I guess like you were talking earlier about how stress can be beneficial. I don't know, are there different types of stress? I think, we don't realize how much of an effect stress has on our bodies. And that's something I try to remember, like with parenting, is like, if this is stressing me way out, I'm just not gonna, I'd rather not be stressed than do the thing that I think might be the better choice, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, we need stress. Stress is what drives adaptation. We're stressing ourselves by going to the gym and working out. That's by definition a stress. All stress goes into the same bucket. So physiological stress from exercising, work stress, emotional stress, the stress of not sleeping enough, all goes into the same bucket. And stress management is about two things: making sure that bucket doesn't overflow, and increasing the size of our bucket and making ourselves more resilient to being able to handle higher levels of stress, which is why resistance training is so beneficial in modern times, because it helps our bodies at a physiological level handle more stress without overflowing the stress bucket. Because once you overflow the stress bucket, bad things happen. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to choose our stressors and make sure that the stressors are necessary stressors and not, worrying about things that we don't have any control over.
Yeah, that kind of, it makes me think of something. The other day I was thinking about how I feel like I used to be more resilient, and it's because, I think I'm resilient in other ways now, but my tolerance for stress is just so low at the moment. Like, I don't do well if I don't sleep enough, that kind of thing. And I do think that resilience or stress tolerance is like, it's a muscle that you have to practice using, but you don't necessarily like want to put yourself in, like, I don't want to make my work life more stressful. So having something that I can control, like exercise or, working out just a little harder or whatever, is something I can control and can increase that muscle usage figuratively and literally. But I also, another thing that it makes me think of is a lyric that I can't remember if I wrote this or co-wrote this, but it was, maybe I'm resilient or maybe I'm just numb. And so I think there is a fine line between like handling stress and tolerating stress and just completely numbing yourself out to it. And I think that's where all of this stuff comes into play. Like, you want to notice when you're having a hard time, and you also, like, you want to notice it and acknowledge it, and you also want to be able to move past it, which is another thing, I guess, with parenting. that comes up now. Like our parents' generation, maybe, I guess maybe more the millennial parents are known for giving out participation trophies, or like not letting their kids fall down and get hurt, or that kind of thing. But there's now better parenting coming out. Like it's like that pendulum swing again. Each kind of parenting is a reaction to the parenting before that. And I'm hoping that we are coming to more of a moderate place where it's like your child falls down and you let them cry about it and you let them be upset about it, but then you also teach them how to get up and keep going. And I think we have to be able to do that for ourselves as well. Like, be upset, feel it. I don't do that very well. I don't let myself feel negative emotions because those are sinful. But I am trying to learn to let myself feel those things and then like figure out what I need to do with it, because I can't just be angry all the time without it affecting my life.
Every dose of stress requires an equal or appropriate dose of recovery. So stress is not inherently bad. Most natural stressors are really good, but we need to understand that you got to get back to baseline after you've undergone a lot of stress. So if it's emotional stress, if you're mourning, for instance, or getting over, some traumatic event that happened, then you need space to be able to recover from that stress. And so, you don't necessarily need to be trying to do everything after you've lost a partner. You don't necessarily need to be trying to, constantly go. Like, we need to go, and then we need to stop and rest. And then we need to go a little bit farther, and then we need to stop and rest and listen and figure out what our body's telling us. And really, we need to figure out where our high mark is in terms of our biofeedback. What's the best we've felt, the most alive we've felt, and how can we get back to that point on as many days as possible. So like, I use for myself and for my clients the Whoop wearable tracker, and it tells you how much strain you had for the day, and it tells you how recovered you are for the day. And like, I tell people, like, you don't need to try to keep your strain low. Like, we want your strain to be up, but then we need to see your recovery come back up too. So after you stress, after you strain, your recovery is going to go down. Your body's going to be struggling to deal with that. If you continue putting insults on your body when it's down, you're just going to keep digging yourself a hole. So we need to really get in touch with the cycles of our body and give ourselves time to heal, not just from physical stress, but every type of stress.
Yeah. There's no space for that these days. It's like you work, you come home, work, come home. One stressful thing to the next stressful thing, because we're like on our phones feeling stressed. That's so important.
Very true.
I want to end things on like a positive note. Tell me about your whole human transformation.
My whole human transformation program is how I help men aged 30 plus to reverse the negative consequences of their high achieving lifestyle. I also help women too, but mostly men who work at a desk, who have put their careers first for many years, and now they're suffering the consequences of the modern lifestyle, of a high achieving lifestyle. So I help men put in place the lifestyle, the exercise, the nutrition factors, and structure their life around those things without having to go to the gym hours every week, without having to restrict their diet, still eating the foods they enjoy to eat, but how can we do that in a way that is respecting the cycles of our body and respecting those nutrient deficiencies, not just from a nutrient perspective, but from a movement perspective, from a nature perspective, and building a sustainable lifestyle to lose weight, build muscle, improve how you move, improve how you feel, and keep it long term.
Tell me about the moment that made you the happiest this past week.
Making my baby girl laugh for the first time, like a good belly laugh. I was holding her and just laughing, and she started laughing too. Not just a chuckle, she usually chuckles, but she was just giving me some good belly laughs, and then I would belly laugh and she would belly laugh more. And yeah, it's great.
Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you.
Always fun to hang out with you, and maybe next time we'll do it in person and have more to say and more hot takes. Get you fired up about the state of the world, all of that.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, talk to you later.
Alrighty.
I need a tagline. Okay, bye.
Peace.